How's it going? This is our appraisal project report, and we put a lot of time and effort into this. So I hope you enjoy. So we chose the subject property. It's in Spartanburg. Um, it has 3 beds, 2.5 bath. It was built in 1922. It has 1,825 square feet, zero point 0.6 acres of land, and has 2 garages. Overall, just a great house to just to start your family with, and it's in a pretty good location. But I'll get a little more into that when we look at the next slide. But yeah, definitely when looking at a new house, you have to look at what's around it and the nice landmarks and just surrounding areas. And one important factor is definitely the school districts and the location of them. And they're all, the elementary, middle school, and high school are all within 15 minutes, which is really nice. As well as an airport is also within 15 minutes. It's a smaller airport, but that's really nice. As well as there's 2 state parks, both within 30 minutes of the subject property. So really good for if you have kids, you want to get out and play, or if you just want to get a break from the city, because the city is another 30 minutes away. So downtown Greenville, it's an up and coming city, and it's a really good area to have a good job and yeah, just raise a good family. If we can look to the next slide, you can see a little map of Spartanburg. Spartanburg is actually just northwest of Greenville. It's not too hectic at all. There is the airport, like I mentioned, but it is a smaller airport. Nice and peaceful. It's more private, and yeah. So when we're looking at the sales, you can see that the house has been sold 3 times. The first time was in 2001, and then there's a pretty big gap, and then in 2017. And then there's actually, while we were doing this project, the house sold during this time in 2021. But Jack will get or more into that later. But overall, the price is definitely going up a little bit over time. And then once again, you see the where all the comparables are relative to the subject, and Mac will get into more of that in just a second. But everything's relatively close, and there's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences in these comparables. So Mac can take it away from here.
This, of course, as you can see, our first comparable right here is definitely the most similar comparable to our property. It is the closest in terms of location, but as is around the same price, a little bit more square footage, but a smaller lot. Same amount of bed and baths. And this is our second comparable, much smaller to our property. Also has a garage and 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms though. It is close in location to our subject property, but it's much cheaper, a little north of $128,000, which gives you some flexibility if you'd like to renovate from the inside. Our third property, similar in terms of size lot, there's a renovated kitchen, brand new bathroom, and new flooring. It is also 3 bed, 2 bath, a little bit cheaper than our subject property at $177,000. And then one thing to note, if you do have a family and children, is it is zoned in a different school district. Our fourth property is the cheapest of all our comparables at $115,000, which gives you flexibility if you'd like to renovate inside, similar to our second property. It does also have more square footage than our subject. Our fifth comparable is the closest of any of the comparables and our subject property to downtown. Similar price and square footage, brand new flooring, and a brand new half bath. And in terms of school district, it is in the same district as all the comparables, besides, of course, comparable number 4. And of all the properties we've mentioned, comparable number 6 is the newest. It was built recently. Much smaller lot than our subject property, but it overall has many similarities, which makes it a great comparable.
Given that you now know about all of our comparables, we wanted to let you know about the first major approach to valuation that we used, which was the sales comparison approach. In order to gather an indicated opinion of value using this approach, we needed to adjust our subject and comparables accordingly. So we decided to adjust for 5 different aspects, which were year built, square feet, lot size, baths, and garages. Our methods for obtaining each adjustment were fairly straightforward and can be found in our report. However, we wanted to mainly mention how we made our adjustment for our garages, as it was the most interesting adjustment we made with regards to our subject and comparables. Comparables 2 and 4 actually didn't have 2 full car garages, but instead they had carports. While a carport is similar to a garage, an adjustment still needed to be made, and after analyzing the difference in costs associated with renovating a carport into a garage, an estimate was found that on average it is $10,000 to turn a carport into a garage for one single garage slot. So comparables 2 and 4 needed adjustments of $20,000 each. If you look at our sales comparison grid, you can see how we gave comparable 1 a weight of 25%. And like Mac mentioned, this is because it's the most similar to our subject property. And now, given all of our adjustments that we made, we ultimately came up with an indicated opinion of value using this valuation method of $237,661.31.
So the cost approach, we were able to use a website called costtobuild.net. And this website, you enter different factors that can be anything from the size, location, number of bedrooms, bathrooms. And once you enter all that information, it gives you a good estimate on how much it would cost to build. One of the more interesting things I thought was the carpentry. That was the most expensive thing that was listed as an item there. And after that, using the cost approach method, we found a value of $226,000.
All right, so the next method we used was the income approach. We started with a direct capitalization method, which was, so we used for our potential gross income, we took the $1,595 estimated rental income that we got from Zillow. And then for our collection losses, we put 2 months because as this is a residential property and not a commercial property, you're most likely going to be renting it out on a monthly basis. And when someone defaults on the rent on 1 month, you normally don't evict them until they at least hit 2. So either they're going to pay it back or they're going to default twice and then you get evicted. And so that's why we put those 2 months. We don't have any miscellaneous income because that's more for commercial properties like vending machines. And like we said, this isn't a commercial property. Our operating expenses, there's 3 places where these expenses came from. The first is electricity. So that we used the average in the area and we got just over $1,100 a year. The next was our property taxes, which was just over $1,260 a year. And we got that from Zillow. That was their estimate on the annual property taxes. And then the last one was $2,300 a year in insurance. And that is the South Carolina average. So for our capital expenditures, we didn't have any. There weren't any in the past, and we figured there's not going to be any in the future since we're going with the trend. And that ended up with just over $11,000 in our net operating income per month. Our cap rate, we use 7.5% because the average in the Spartanburg area is 7 to 8%. So we went right down the middle. And doing this, we got a estimated value of $150,000, a little over. So we use this net operating income and the estimated value from the income approach. We brought those over to our direct cash flow approach, discounted cash flow. So we chose a 10-year holding period. And when we took the 150,000 from the direct cap for the selling price, because we're holding it for 10 years, we increased that with inflation at 2%. And then with the other cash flows from the NOI, we ended up, after we did the discounted cash flow, we got $160,000 as our appraisal price for the discounted cash flow, We also did this with a 8% discount rate. That was the rate we used to discount the cash flows, and we use that because that is also the Spartanburg average. So on a reconciliation, we put 60% to sales comparison, 40% to cost, and 0% to both methods of both methods of the income approach. We did this because we just felt that the cost and sales comparison approach were much more applicable for the type of property that we had. The income approach is generally used for commercial properties and income generating properties, which ours is not because of the age and like the quality of the home. And this can make our numbers make sense because both methods of the income approach were quite low, and that has to do with the age and just the fact that this is a residential property, not something that's necessarily made for generating income. We put 40% to the cost approach because it was a simple design and it wasn't very hard to find the replication cost. This also has to do with there's not a lot of unique features which would be hard to value. This also goes over to the sales comparison, which we gave 60% weight to. And we did this because it's a single family home. Like I said, it doesn't have a lot of unique features. The price adjustments were on simple things like the square footage, the beds, the bath, the year built, like the lot size, and whether it has a garage or not. So there was simple things that made it not very hard to do the sales comparison approach. And that just seemed the most applicable for our home. And then after we did all these weights, we got a final value of $233,255. This is very close to the initial sales value or the sale price that our subject property had when we started this project, which was $224,900. And then, like Brendan said, since we've been working on this project, this property has been sold, and it's sold for $230,000. So our final appraisal estimate was only 1.42% off the actual sale value.
We'd be doing a disservice to the audience if we didn't mention the tremendous impact that COVID-19 has had on the world, especially the US housing market. Therefore, we wanted to focus mainly on 3 big topics with the coronavirus, and this has to do with the simple everyday interactions that COVID has impacted, our financial institutions and markets, and specifically the US housing market, including the location of our subject and comparables located in Spartanburg, South Carolina. On March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared the newly originating coronavirus in 2019, it was found, as a global pandemic. As a result, the stock market on March 12th, 2020 tanked. The Dow Jones dropped 10%, the S&P 9.5%, and the NASDAQ 9.4%, as you can see by looking at the Dow Jones in Figure 1. This major downturn in the market was the worst on record since the historic crash of 1987, which shocked Americans and the world alike. So this was a very big deal. Now, as the pandemic has run its course and there is some light at the end of the tunnel because vaccines are being distributed across the US and worldwide, some sectors within the stock market have performed extraordinarily well over the past year. These sectors mainly include software application and internet retail companies, which include the likes of Apple, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, just to name a few. Not to overestimate how well these companies have performed over the past year, but they made a historic feat in August of 2020, even with the pandemic grappling the United States. Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, and Apple's net worths combined constituted over 20% of the the stock market's entire net worth. These valuations are unprecedented and quite uncharacteristic. However, these companies have continued to thrive, and many are still wondering if their tremendous gains over the past year will continue into the future. With regards to the US housing market as a whole, the Federal Reserve has played a major part in stimulating the economy. The Fed has lowered interest rates to historic lows that no generation in America has ever seen before. These lower interest rates are in hopes that the cheaper borrowing will help stimulate the economy. If you look at Figure 2, which you see now, you can see how low the Fed has kept interest rates and pushed them to historic lows. It shows the 30-year fixed mortgage rates. Now, with these low interest rates, however, there is belief among experts that many citizens in the US are moving away from their apartments and looking to become homeowners. Craig Lazara, the managing director at S&P Dow Jones Indices, is one of those experts who believes the housing market is being heavily pushed by these apartment renters looking to become homeowners.
Looking further into the impact on the U.S. housing market, we know, as Charlie just mentioned, that the historical low interest rates were prevalent. Because of this, the buyers have been looking to take advantage of these interest rates and purchase a home. As a result, the demand has been constrained and housing prices have shot up. Because of this, single-family homes have been at historic highs in this hot real estate market. And on this slide, there's a figure 3. This figure 3 is the S&P Case-Shiller Index, which is a pretty good metric to recognize how much housing prices have increased. And on this particular figure, you can see that the housing prices have increased dramatically over the past year. However, despite the increase of prices, which increasing the prices is seemingly a good thing, not everyone has benefited, as some analysts of the real estate market still believe that there are many first-time home buyers that are being left out, and then because of this skyrocketed prices, we definitely attribute that to the COVID-19 times. And then looking at the impact on Spartanburg and the housing market, as shown on the slide, 9 weeks into the pandemic, unemployment claims of over 500,000 residents were there, as well as in May of 2020, jobless claims reached 2,546 workers just in Spartanburg alone. There's definitely been an inventory shortage as builders have been struggling to keep up with the demand. However, despite this shocking stat, after May 21st, the numbers have dropped to just 266 unemployment claims since the week of this March in 2021, which is almost a year later, which has obviously been a huge improvement over time. And even since the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, there's been an average of $10,000 increase in home prices. And when you take that into account, as well as the intense demand in the area, given such a great area for schools and attractions, it's clear that our subjects sold for $230,000 approximately for the appraisal of this property. And then as a result, with the interest rates at all-time lows, those interested in owning a home must weigh the rapid increase in home prices and decide whether this hot real estate market can sustain itself, or if they believe the bubble, which some speculate might burst in the near future, does in fact come to an end. However, only time will tell, and we'll see, I guess, later on.
So some of the strengths and weaknesses, we were able to find really good comparable properties that were very similar to the subject property. Websites helped a lot just with, especially when it came to the cost approach, Zillow for the rent. We had a great group dynamic, and what I mean by that is that we all played our own part in the project. We had great communication. And then some of the weaknesses, we were never able to physically see the property, which makes it hard to estimate certain things, especially like when it comes to quality. And the real estate, another weakness is the real estate market is, really hot right now, and the prices are pretty high. Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Thank you.